My parents paid for my sister's $400,000 wedding, but sent me a bill for mine's, so I wrote a check and cut them off forever. I never had the greatest relationship with my parents, but it wasn't terrible either. They always seemed to favor my sister Sarah, and over time I learned to live with it. Sarah, now 32, had always been the golden child, while I, at 28, was used to living in her shadow. Growing up, she got the newest phones, the better clothes, and most of their attention. Meanwhile, I made do with hand-me-downs and worked part-time jobs since I was 16 to afford the things I wanted. I didn't complain much. I understood my parents weren't obligated to provide anything beyond the basics. Plus, I took pride in being independent. The real shock came when Sarah got married 3 years ago. My parents gave her and her husband an astonishing $400,000 as a wedding gift, which they used to buy a beautiful home in an upscale neighborhood. At the time, I was genuinely happy for her, even though it stung a little. I had my own life going. Aine was thriving as a software engineer, had saved a decent amount, and was dating Tom, who would later become my husband. I figured my time would come. I didn't dwell on the fact that my parents had never given me anything remotely close to what they gave Sarah. I simply didn't expect it. Fast forward to last year, when Tom proposed. I was over the moon. We had been together for years, and he was everything I had hoped for in a partner. We planned a modest wedding, nothing extravagant, because we wanted to focus on building our future. Neither of us wanted to blow all our savings on a single day, no matter how special it was. We had budgeted around $36,000, which felt fair for the kind of wedding we envisioned. Elegant, but not excessive. To my surprise, my parents offered to pay for the entire wedding. I was touched. For the first time, it felt like they were acknowledging me as equally important. They seemed genuinely enthusiastic, asking about venues, vendors, and offering help with planning. I didn't think too much about the amount. I knew they had already done so much for Sarah, and maybe now they wanted to do something for me, too. I never expected anything close to what Sarah received, but their offer to cover the wedding felt generous and meaningful. The wedding day was perfect. We had a small, intimate ceremony with close friends and family, exactly how we imagined it. My parents gave speeches, danced with us, and appeared genuinely happy. For once, I felt like I wasn't in Sarah's shadow. I felt seen. I felt loved. It was a moment I'd waited my whole life for. Tom and I had planned to leave for our honeymoon the following week, but we had some work commitments to handle first. Then, just 2 days after the wedding, I received an email from my father. It wasn't a sweet note or a leftover wedding gift card like I had imagined. Instead, it was a PDF attachment 10 itemized invoice listing every single expense they had covered for the wedding. The email itself was brief and cold. Please settle this at your earliest convenience. Your mother and I expect prompt payment. I stared at the screen in disbelief. The invoice totaled $35,463.89, down to the last flower arrangement and appetizer. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Tom found me sitting there, frozen, and when I showed him the email, he was furious. It wasn't about the money. We could afford to pay it back if we had to. That wasn't the issue. The problem was that they had offered to pay for the wedding. I hadn't asked them to contribute a single cent. They had come to me, offered it as a gift, and had even seemed excited to be part of the process. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. This wasn't just about money. It was about years of being treated as less than. When Sarah got married, they handed her $400,000, no questions asked. Not once did they ask her to repay a dime. And now, here they were, treating my wedding like a business transaction, like it had been a loan all along. It felt like every ounce of emotional baggage from years of favoritism had finally exploded in this one cruel act. The next morning, after a long, sleepless night discussing it with Tom, I made a decision. I wrote my parents a check for the full amount. But I didn't stop there. I also sent them a letter. I knew I couldn't confront them face to face without breaking down emotionally, so I chose my words carefully. I didn't want it to turn into a screaming match. In the letter, I explained just how hurt I was. I reminded them that I had been financially independent since I was 16, paying my own way while watching them give everything to Sarah. I wrote that when they offered to pay for the wedding, I, foolishly, believed they were finally treating me with the same love and care they had always shown my sister. Instead, they blindsided me. I didn't hold back, told them that all these years I had stayed quiet and let their favoritism slide. I never said a word. But what I couldn't accept was this cruel baton switch. They made it seem like they were giving me a gift, only to demand repayment afterward as if I were some outsider, not their own daughter. I also wrote that this would be the final financial exchange between us. From now on, I would decline any offers of help, support, or gifts. I made it clear that I wanted nothing from them ever again, not even an inheritance. I told them to give it all to Sarah, just like they always had. I mailed the check, included my letter, and then blocked their numbers. I needed space. Tom supported my decision, and for a moment I felt a wave of relief. But then, silence. Days went by, and I didn't hear a word from them. The silence only deepened my anger. Then the messages from extended family started pouring in. Distant aunts, uncles, and old family friends began calling and texting, accusing me of being ungrateful and overly dramatic. They said my parents had done so much for me and that I was blowing everything out of proportion. Sarah called me too, screaming about how I was tearing the family apart. She told me I should have just paid the invoice quietly and moved on. Classic. Sir always taking their side. And why wouldn't she? I haven't responded to any of them. I don't even know what I'd say. On one hand, I feel completely justified. After years of being treated like the runner-up, this felt like the final straw. I finally stood up for myself, but on the other hand, can't stop wondering if I overreacted. Am I being too sensitive? Was it really that unreasonable for me to expect them to treat my wedding like a gift, the way they did with Sarah's? Should I have just sucked it up, paid the invoice, and let it go? Tom's family has been incredible throughout all of this. His parents were horrified when they heard what mine had done. They've been checking in on us daily, offering comfort and support. Still, the barrage of messages from my own relatives is starting to wear me down. I'm questioning everything. Did I go too far? Should I have talked to my parents before cutting them off completely? Or was I right to finally draw a line after years of being made to feel less than Sarah? Now, I feel stuck. I honestly don't know if I'm in the wrong. Part of me believes I had every right to be hurt and to take a stand. But another part worries that I've created a divide that can never be repaired. Maybe I should have handled things differently. I really don't know anymore. Do any of you have advice? Since my last post, things have taken an unexpected turn for the worse. I never imagined that simply sending that check and letter would trigger such chaos, but here we are. Yesterday morning, I woke up to an email from my mother. It slipped through because she used her work email, which I hadn't blocked yet. The email was long, self-righteous, and full of justifications. In it, she claimed that the invoice wasn't meant to be taken seriously. According to her, they never intended to cash the check. She said the whole thing was a life lesson about financial responsibility. Apparently, they wanted to test my reaction, and once I had learned my lesson, they planned to tear up the check and surprise me with a $100,000 gift as a real wedding present. I sat there, stunned. A life lesson. What kind of parents do that to their adult daughter? The more I read, the more disturbed I felt. It wasn't about love or fairness, it was about control. They wanted to see whether I'd submit or stand my ground. It felt manipulative. It felt cruel. I didn't hesitate. I used mobile deposit to cash the check immediately. There was no way I was giving them the chance to tear it up after that ridiculous lesson. I wanted it processed, and I wanted them to feel the weight of their own actions. In response to my mother's email, I kept my reply short and direct. Thank you for confirming that this was indeed a deliberate test rather than a misunderstanding. Then, I blocked her work email too. I knew they'd try to reach out again, but I wasn't playing along anymore. No more games. No more lessons. Later that evening, things escalated. Sarah showed up at my apartment unannounced. She started banging on the door, yelling my name. At first, I didn't respond, hoping she'd give up and leave, but she didn't. Instead, she started shouting through the door, accusing me of being childish and blowing everything out of proportion. She claimed our parents were just trying to teach me responsibility, because they were supposedly worried about my spending habits. Hearing that, especially from Sarah, made my blood boil. This was the same person who had never paid her own phone bill, who had never held a job without our parents supporting her. And now she had the nerve to lecture me about financial responsibility. As she kept ranting, I quietly started recording everything on my phone. I didn't know where this was going, but I wanted proof in case things got even messier. Sarah went on and on about how I was destroying the family over something so trivial. She insisted I should just apologize, let it go, and move on. She claimed our parents never meant to hurt me and had always done their best for both of us. Over and over, she called me dramatic and blamed me entirely for the fallout. I didn't say a word. I didn't open the door. I just sat there, listening silently, fuming inside. Eventually, after what felt like forever, she gave up and left, but not before calling me selfish and accusing me of cutting ties with the family over money. Once she was gone, I sat in complete silence, feeling the weight of everything that had just happened. Her outburst only reinforced what I had known for years. She would always take their side, no matter how unfair or hurtful they were. That night, my phone blew up again, more messages from extended family. Apparently, Sarah had run straight to my parents after she left, and now they were rallying everyone. I started receiving messages from aunts, uncles, even distant family friends. Most of them followed the same script, calling me ungrateful, saying I was creating unnecessary drama and urging me to apologize to my parents. One message in particular stuck with me. It was from an aunt I hadn't spoken to in years. She told me I was lucky to have parents who cared enough to teach me life lessons and that I should be grateful they were willing to spend anything at all on my wedding. She ended the message by saying I should appreciate having parents who wanted to be involved in my life at all. I couldn't believe how quickly everyone turned on me. It was like they all blindly sided with my parents simply because they were the ones with money and influence. No one cared about the emotional manipulation or the years of favoritism. All they saw was me rejecting what they assumed was generosity, and that was enough to brand me the villain. At this point, Tom started getting really concerned about how much this was affecting me. Kept asking if I wanted to take a break from social media or just turn off my phone for a few days to get some peace. He reminded me that I wasn't the one in the wrong, that I had every right to be upset. He brought up all the times my parents had shown blatant favoritism toward Sarah, and how they had always used money as a form of control. The most frustrating part was that I couldn't get any real answers. My parents weren't reaching out to explain anything further. In their minds, they were the misunderstood, well-meaning parents trying to teach a lesson, while I was the ungrateful daughter who'd blown everything out of proportion. I started to second-guess myself. Maybe I should have handled it differently. Maybe instead of sending that letter and blocking them, I should have tried to sit down and talk things through. But deep down, I knew how those conversations always went. They would twist everything until I ended up apologizing for being hurt. It was a toxic cycle I'd been trapped in for years, and I just didn't have the strength to go through it again. For now, I'm focusing on the life Tom and I are building together. There's not much else I can do but hope things settle down. Eventually, maybe someday things will get better, but right now, I just need peace. Hey everyone, I wanted to start by thanking you all for your responses. Reading through your comments, advice, and personal stories truly helped me process everything that's been going on. The past few days have been an emotional roller coaster, and your support has meant more to me than you could ever know. While I've tried to stay strong through all of this, things have taken yet another unexpected turn. A few days after Sarah's visit, got a call from my father's brother, my uncle. I hadn't spoken to him in years, and honestly, I wasn't sure what to expect. He's never been particularly close to the family, so I assumed he was just calling to tell me to make amends with my parents like everyone else had. But instead, What he shared completely shifted my perspective. He said he'd heard about everything through the family grapevine and felt compelled to reach out. Because, apparently, this wasn't the first time my parents had pulled something like this. 20 years ago, a similar situation happened between him and my grandparents, my dad's parents. My uncle had refused to go along with their manipulative tactics, and in response, they smeared his name throughout the family. They accused him of trying to steal from them, of being ungrateful and selfish. He explained that back then, my dad didn't support him. In fact, he had sided with their parents, which caused a massive rift between the two brothers, one that never really healed. My uncle said he had always felt abandoned by my dad, and it had taken him years to fully process how their family operated. Listening to him talk felt like hearing my own story, but from a generation earlier. My grandparents had used money and emotional manipulation to control my uncle, just like my parents are now trying to do with me. The more he spoke, the more everything started to fall into place. My parents weren't just acting out of character. They were repeating a toxic pattern that had existed long before I was even born. They had learned this behavior from their own parents. And now, my dad, who once played the role of the complicit siblings, essentially watching history repeat itself. Except this time, he's in the role I'm in, and I've become the one refusing to play along. My uncle also shared that standing his ground had come at a cost. After their falling out, my grandparents cut him off entirely, both financially and emotionally. They cast him as the black sheep of the family, and to this day, some relatives still believe the lies they told about him. It was all about control, he said, and when they couldn't control him anymore, they erased him. Hearing his story gave me chills. It was like a mirror reflecting my own experience. My parents were angry because I refused to play their game, and instead of trying to understand where I was coming from, they rallied the entire family against me. I began to see how deep the dysfunction really ran, how rooted they were in this belief that love must be earned, and that control equaled care. After that conversation, I couldn't stop thinking about everything he'd said. It made me wonder, was my father acting out of guilt? Maybe he knew, deep down, that he had failed his brother all those years ago, and now he was trying to justify it by doubling down on the same methods. My parents had built their whole dynamic with Sarah and me around the idea that we owed them something, and any time we deviated from that script was treated as a betrayal. But the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. This wasn't really about me. This was about them, about their unresolved trauma, their toxic family legacy, and their refusal to break the cycle. Over the next few days, I kept receiving messages from relatives. It was obvious that Sarah was working overtime behind the scenes to turn people against me. One of my cousins, someone I'd always been close to, sent me a long text saying I was being selfish and disrespectful. She said I was throwing away my relationship with my parents and that it wasn't too late to fix things, but I needed to humble myself and apologize before it was too late. Her message echoed everything I'd already been hearing: guilt trips, gaslighting, and emotional pressure dressed up as concern. And I was exhausted, absolutely drained. I realized I was raised in a family where love came with conditions. Nothing was ever truly given, it always came with strings attached. Whether it was financial help, emotional support, or even something as simple as a wedding, there was always an unspoken expectation that I would fall in line and be grateful no matter what the cost to my own well-being. And now that I've broken from that pattern, they're doing what they've always done. They're isolating me, painting me as ungrateful, and cutting me off, just like they did to my uncle. Tom has been my rock through all of this. After the call with my uncle, we sat down and had a long, heartfelt conversation about the future. He told me that no matter what happens, we'll face it together. Well, and that I don't owe anyone anything. Not my parents, not Sarah, and certainly not the extended relatives who suddenly think they're armchair therapists. His support has never wavered, and for that, I'm more grateful than words can express. Still, even with Tom by my side, I've been feeling conflicted. My parents really did a number on me emotionally, and there's a part of me that keeps wondering if I might be in the wrong. Is there a way to fix this without sacrificing my own boundaries? I spent hours lost in my thoughts, going back and forth, trying to figure out if there's a path to peace that doesn't mean abandoning my self-respect. Then something unexpected happened. Day received a voicemail from my dad. It was the first time he'd reached out directly since I sent the letter and the check. His voice didn't sound angry or demanding like I thought it would. Instead, he sounded tired. In the message, he said he didn't want to fight anymore and was open to talking if I was willing. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of what happened. But something about the tone felt different, like a shift had occurred. Maybe he was starting to understand that I wasn't going to cave this time. I haven't responded yet. Part of me wants to call him back and see if there's any chance for an honest conversation. But another part of me is cautious. What if this is just another tactic to pull me back in and make me feel guilty? My uncle's words still echo in my mind. They'll never admit they're wrong because they don't think they are. If I do decide to speak to my dad, I need to be emotionally ready for the possibility that nothing will change. Right now, I'm still processing everything, the revelations from my uncle. It's a flood of messages from extended family. And now, this voicemail. I want to believe my parents are capable of change. I want to believe they can finally see me as an equal instead of someone to control. But after years of being treated this way, I know it'll take far more than one phone call to rebuild trust. For now, I'm taking it one day at a time. Tom and I are focused on building our life together, one that's healthy and free of toxic family dynamics. But the doubt lingers. Am I doing the right thing by standing my ground? Or am I pushing away the only family I've ever known? As much as I want clarity, the truth is I'm still in that same uncertain space. And maybe that's okay. I'll keep you all posted as things unfold. But for now, I'm doing the best I can to navigate through it all. Hi everyone, once again. Thank you. Your continued advice and support have been absolutely invaluable as I've been trying to untangle this mess with my family. When I made my first post, I honestly didn't know what direction I was headed in or what I even wanted. But after reading through your thoughtful responses and reflecting deeply, I've come to some important realizations. One thing that stood out was how many of you pointed out that I've spent so long trying to fix things with my parents, forcing myself to pretend everything was okay just to maintain a sense of normalcy. The truth is, I don't even know what normal looks like anymore. The dynamic I've had with them has always been unhealthy, and I've spent years trying to deny that. But now, I realize it's okay if things don't go back to normal, because that version of normal was broken to begin with. Many of you also said something that hit me hard. I might have been too forgiving in the way I interpreted my dad's actions. I had been clinging to this hope that maybe his behavior was rooted in guilt, that maybe deep down he knew he was wrong and was just too afraid to say it. But you were right, guilt doesn't justify manipulation. It doesn't excuse years of favoritism, emotional control, and conditional love. And it certainly doesn't erase the harm that's already been done. Just because he might feel remorse doesn't mean I have to let him off the hook for any of it. At the same time, I realized something else: I needed closure. Whether or not reconciliation was on the table, I had to close this chapter of my life. So I made a decision. I was going to meet my dad. Not for them, for me. When we finally sat down, I could tell right away he wasn't the same man I had grown up fearing. He looked tired, worn down, and for the first time in my life, he actually seemed remorseful. He didn't say the words, "I'm sorry," but he did express regret about the wedding, about how my mom and Sarah had treated me. He even said he'd spoken to some of our relatives and asked them to stop harassing me. That alone brought a small, unexpected sense of relief. But then he did something unexpected. He tried to return the money. He pulled out the exact check I had mailed him for the wedding expenses and slid it across the table, asking me to take it back. He said that he and my mom had talked it over and wanted to make things right. But this time, I was prepared. I told him, as calmly and clearly as I could, that I wasn't taking the money back. I explained that this had never been just about the money. It was about everything: the years of being treated like I didn't matter, of always being second to Sarah, and the emotional weight I had carried because of it. Taking the check back wasn't going to erase any of that. This wasn't a transaction, it was a lifetime of pain that couldn't be undone with a dollar amount. I could see his frustration when I refused. It was like he didn't know what else he could offer. In his mind, handing the check back was his way of apologizing, of fixing it. But he couldn't grasp that the damage went so much deeper than what money could repair. After I said no, he went quiet for a few moments. Then he said he didn't want to lose me. He admitted that things had gone too far and that he didn't want our family to fall apart. I could tell he was trying to be sincere. But even in that moment, I realized I wasn't there for reconciliation, not the kind he was hoping for. I wasn't looking to return to how things used to be. Kay didn't want to pretend like everything could just magically go back to normal. What I needed was distance. Real, honest space from all of it. So I told him that. I explained that while this meeting had been important, it didn't change much. I wasn't ready to forgive and forget. I needed time to heal on my own terms. Surprisingly, he didn't argue. He didn't try to change my mind or accuse me of overreacting like he had so many times before. He just nodded and said he understood. In some ways, that quiet acceptance meant more than any apology. As I walked away from the meeting, I felt a strange mix of emotions. I wasn't angry, but I wasn't relieved either. I think I had hoped for closure, some kind of neat ending, but closure isn't always clean. There was no dramatic breakthrough or heartfelt reunion. It was just over. Said what I needed to say. Now it's up to me to move forward. Since then, I've taken steps to protect my peace. I've blocked a few more family members who continued to send me guilt-tripping messages. Tom and I have been focusing on building our life together, free from the constant chaos of family drama. It's been nice to finally breathe again. Still, there are moments of doubt. I know I made the right decision in standing up for myself, but that doesn't mean it's been easy. There are days I wonder if I could have handled things differently, if I should have given my parents another chance. But then I remember the years I spent feeling like I wasn't enough, and I remind myself that I deserve more. Sarah, as expected, hasn't reached out since the meeting with my dad. I assume she's still angry about everything that's happened. But at this point, I'm not trying to fix anything with her. She's made it clear where she stands. And I've accepted that our relationship will never be what I once hoped it could be, and I'm okay with that now. Letting go of the fantasy that we could be close has been painful but also freeing. As for my dad, I don't know what the future holds. He seemed genuinely remorseful, but I'm not sure that's enough to rebuild everything that's been broken. For now, I'm focusing on myself, my peace, my happiness, and the life I'm building. If there's one thing this entire experience has taught me, it's that I deserve to prioritize my own well-being. For once, I'm choosing me, and I'm going to keep doing exactly that. So, I guess this is where things stand for now. It's not the happy ending I might have once hoped for, but it's the ending I needed. And sometimes, that's enough. Thank you again to everyone who's followed along, offered advice, and shared your support. I appreciate it more than I can ever truly express.